Release the Kraken!
Greetings, fellow game designers. Ron here at Lame Duck Studios. And today, we're going to take a look at how to export a character to go into Unity. Really, this really also applies to Unreal, but you could use it for any pretty much 3D gaming application that you're going to be doing. So I have Elf Dude here, and I have a new Unity project right here. And I'm in Unity 6.02 F1, but really this should work for any version of Unity. This isn't even the newest version of Unity 6. This is just what we're using at the school, so it's what I've got. But we've got Elf Dude here, and I grabbed Elf Dude because he's a pretty simple character. We don't have to worry too much about anything, and yeah, and we'll take a look at a couple different ones. Now this video is a beginner video, and we are going to take a look at how to export different character setups. We're not going to go into coding today. We're not going to go into animations today. I want to try to keep this focused on how to export the characters and do that sort of thing. So here we got Elf Dude, and you can see if I go to my channel box here, just going to give us some more room. So he's textured. He's got a basic skeleton. He doesn't have a jaw. No big deal. Got some eyes. He does have a hairpiece. If we bring up the hair, there we go. There's the hair. We also have a hoodie, and there that is, way down there. And we'll take a look at those. Now those are on the ground because we're going to export them separately. Now of course you can see that my character is positioned to where his feet are on the ground. That is very important. You don't want your character to be halfway through the floor when you export him, because that's where he's going to be in the game. So just make sure that your character is at the floor, and that the floor is 0, 0, 0 in the world space. So something that you will see very common for characters is having a root joint, or a root bone. It depends on where you're working, who you're working with, but if you're going into Unreal, you definitely want to have a root bone. Unity doesn't seem to care much, but I find that having a root bone really helps out with doing a lot of animations. So your root bone is basically the thing that is oriented to the world, and then your character is oriented to that thing, and it just helps you kind of move around positionally. So I recommend having one. And Unreal will give you one if you don't have one, but you don't really want Unreal to give you one. You're better off creating your own. But that's the general setup. So all you need to export, pretty easy. You select your skeleton, you select your skin, and any pieces in your hierarchy that have to go. So you can say I have the body, the eyes. You can see those need to go, so I make sure I get those. By the way, I'm using Control and clicking to specify what I want. If you do Shift and click, you can grab a group, but Control and click lets you pick the things you need. So I need the skin that I want, so body, eyes, and my root skeleton. Get those. File, Export Selection. Find a place to put this. I'm going to go into my Elf Dude folder here. You can see I already have a bind pose for him, but I'm going to make a new one just so you can see. The naming convention in general is SK for skeletal mesh, and then whatever the character is. So in this case it's Elf Dude. And then what I'm actually exporting. So this is our bind pose. Now the bind pose is the reference pose. That's your T pose or your A pose. You ever played Fortnite in the middle of the game, the character just T poses? That's the character not having an animation, and so it defaults to the reference pose. You have to have a reference pose. So that's what your bind pose is. I'm going to mark this as tut, so I know that this is the demonstration one. We should be using the FBX export option, and then I'm going to go ahead and close all these. The stuff that we need over here is going to be under these file specific or file type specific options. In there we got a bunch of stuff. Under include we want to go to geometry, and if you're going into Unreal, we want to have smoothing groups checked, Again, Unreal will yell at you if you don't. Unity doesn't seem to care. Smooth mesh and reference asset content. These are the three that you should have. You can add other things if you want, but those are the three you should have. We're not dealing with NURBS. You can leave that alone. Animation. We do not have animation on the bind pose. That is going to be our reference pose, so leave that unchecked. And everything else should be default. Once you're happy with it, you can hit export. Now, you may get a warning, just like I did. It says, warning, you have skin definition 20, and it's really just saying that there are certain bones in this particular asset that have not been skin weighted. That's going to be true. You just have to understand what the warning is. Make sure that you know what's going on with yours. So in this case, it says unable to find the bind pose or the default skin pose for the root, pelvis, and a few other joints. And the reason for that is, I can go ahead and close this. The reason for that is the root bone itself is just a reference point in space. Nothing is really bound to it. So you shouldn't have any skin weights on it. My forehead joint here, that I use to anchor like the hat and the hair and that sort of thing. You don't need to put skin weights on this. You can if you want to. You don't need them. Other things like these very, very end fingertip joints, these are there to kind of create this bone, but these don't need to be weighted. It's usually this joint and this bone that are weighted. The tips you don't really need to be weighted. You can build your skeleton without these, but sometimes there's rotational issues, so it's just easier to leave them in and just ignore the fact that they're not weighted. Okay, so that's the model out. We're going to go ahead and import the model. So we'll jump into our Unity project. Of course, you can, right-click and go to Import New Asset. That's perfectly reasonable. I just prefer to drag things in, and I also prefer to have a folder to put them in. So in our assets, I will create a folder, and this will be a skeletal mesh. So skeletal meshes. There we go. I'll open that. And then we will grab our File Explorer. And there are our assets. And of course, I do have some animations here, but I'll save that for a different video. You can grab your SK for, remember the SK is short for skeletal mesh. If it's a model that does not have a skeleton, then it would be a static mesh. So SM for static mesh. And that just helps you organize. And you can see that all of my skeletal meshes are in a little area, right? And you can see all the animations are in their own area, and it's just easier for me to figure out where things are at. But you grab whatever one you want, and then drag it in. Now this will pop in like so. You can see we have our body asset down here. There's a general geometry, and some shaders and such that come with it. And you can, if I just jump into my scene here, just drag in your model and use it bare bone as it is. One thing I want to do is just check my center, make this be local, and make this be pivot so we can see where that is. Go ahead and make a folder for textures here. So textures. I'll also make one for materials. Create materials. So to get the textures and such, we need to grab them. So if they didn't automatically come in, you have to go find them. In my case, mine didn't come in, so I have to go find where they're at. If you're not sure, you can go to your model, attributes, and then go to its material, hit the arrow, and then there's an address here. And you can always follow your address to wherever it is. So I'm just going to steal this address, and I'm going to drop it into a tab here. And then I'm just going to go to the folder where that lives. There we go. All right, go to my textures folder, and I will drag that in. So I've got the elf body target file. I'll grab that. I'll also get the hair and whatever other sub pieces you need for that. So go ahead and grab those in. Now I did get a notice when I imported my normal maps that these came in as normals, and it wants to just make sure you want to set these as normals. I could hit fix now and it would automatically do it for me. I'll show you what you need to do if that doesn't happen. So I'll hit fix now. Now if I grab my normals, you can see that this one is set to normal map, this one is not. So I'm going to make sure to set it to normal map. And then I'll save that, and then get the other one, and then normal map, and then save that. Apply. There are my textures. And hooray! Unity figured out that those are connected, and it hooked them up for me. Now if it doesn't, if this does not connect for you, we're going to extract the materials. And I recommend extracting the materials anyway, because it gives you more control. If I get my skeletal mesh here, and I grab its material, you can see that I don't really have a lot of control over this. Everything's grayed out. Kind of annoying, right? If I go to the main body and go under materials, you can see they are here. There's the eye material and then the basic elf material, right? I can't really do a whole lot to them. So what I would recommend is just going up to material and hitting extract materials. And then go to your assets folder, choose materials, and then select folder. That's going to extract them out of here. And then you'll have them so that you can make changes to them pretty easily. And you can see now everything is no longer grayed out, and I can make all my changes. And if your textures did not attach, all you got to do is hit the drop down. It's really tiny. It's like right here. Hit the drop down, and then you can pick your textures out of the options here. Or you can go to your texture menu and just drag them in, and that's allowed as well. Hooray. Same thing for your normal maps. Just make sure that if you're using your base texture and you have a normal map for it, that you plug it into the normal map spot. So for example, my elf body has an elf body normal, so that needs to be connected. And pretty easy peasy. So let's go back into Maya, and I want to show a couple other options. That's pretty much the ins and out of exporting a character. I know the video was like 13 minutes long or whatever. But I want to show you some other options for exporting, because not every character is the same, and you might run into some stuff. So in this case, my character, I'm going to go ahead and just hide. So if you grab part of the model and hit H, you can hide it. So I'll grab that, hit H, get those, hit H. I want to bring in my hair. So here's my hair, and my hair has its own skeleton. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the hair skeleton. I'll make sure both of those are visible. So there they are. So I have the hair and the hair skeleton. Okay. So those are both ready to go. I gotta get my hair, its skeleton, file, export selection. And again, this will be an SK underscore. This is elf dude. I'm gonna say hair. And then bind pose. All of my other settings are the same. Now I can hide those. I'll get the hoodie and the hoodie bind pose here. And I will export selection. Make that be the hoodie. Alright, we'll jump back in. Skeletal meshes here. We will import the hair and the hoodie. Those are both in. Hooray. And these are all separated. So we'll take a look at how to set those up as well. So here's my hair. And I will extract its material just to be consistent with earlier. So there's that one, and then I'll get the hoodie and hit extract materials. And I'll just get those in case I need them. What I would recommend before you use your character by itself is to really just create an empty prefab for it. So I'm going to go ahead and just nuke him from the world here. And I will make a prefab for my character. So I'll do prefab to make a folder. And then in here, I will just right click, create, and go down to scene, and make a prefab. So in here, I'm just going to call this elf dude. So this is the base for that, and I'll go and get my skeletal meshes. So here he is. He should be at 0, 0, 0. I'll bring in his hair. Okay. That is down there at 0, 0, 0. But for the hair, I really want that to be attached to my skeleton here. So I hit the drop down. Spine 1, 2, and 3. 2 and 3. Go to the neck, head, and then my hair is actually going to be going to head 2. So I'm going to drag this and drag it into head 2, like so. Grab that and make sure that I set its base to 0 and 0, and it's going to be anchored on that joint. Nice. And now I can always just, if I need to swap out hairdos or give him a hat or something, I can always just hide this. You know, there's a toggle right here to hide it. Okay. Now for the hoodie, I'm going to go ahead and just close the head. And then my hoodie is going to be attached to neck. So I'll drop it in there. And you can see that these are the things that are attached to the neck. So neck has head, hoodie, and my collar. So I'm going to go ahead and just set this hoodie to 0, 0, 0. Now you'll see that my hoodie is rotated. And the reason for that is it is set to the orientation of its parent joint. Just be aware that it's a bit weird because if we go into Maya and I get this joint, let's take a look at the orientation of that joint. I'll get display, transform display, local rotation axis. So this is oriented with X going down the bone, Z forward, and Y out. So if we take a look at that, the hoodie is oriented with world up for Y, Z forward, and then X is going to be out left and right. But you can see because X travels up and down the bone, it's oriented to its parent. So I'm going to go ahead and just change the orientation. It's going to be a 90-degree orient for that. So then I'll get the hair root. I'll set that to 0. And then I will rotate it. Let's do 90 in Z. So now it's in the position it needs to be in. Alright. Anything else you need to do for this? I would attach everything to the main object. I would avoid attaching things to the skeleton or any of the subgroups unless you absolutely need to. So collision boxes and stuff I'd put on the main body for the main collision. And then for like if you're throwing punches or whatever, I'd do the collision boxes for the punches, you know, directly on the hands. But yeah, so that's the general setting that up. And then I can always take the prefab for this, and it's very easy to confuse these because the skeletal mesh is blue in color like your prefab, right? I can drag this one in, that's the skeletal mesh, but I can also bring in my prefab, which is just this guy. They look the same, except the prefab has all of the sub pieces attached to it, whereas the regular one is just by himself. So just be aware of those, they are different. Alright, now before I put this video to bed, I want to show how to import and how to export other character setups. So let me go ahead and open up Mario. Okay, so for Mario, you can see that this guy has a rig on him, and he also has a group for his geometry. So how does this work? Would it be different? And the answer is not really. It's kind of the same. One thing that I would do is I would make sure that you save your file as its own thing. So this one is Mario bind pose underscore rig underscore FK, right? What I would do is I would take it. So if you have your character with the rig on it, I would go File, I would Save As, And I would make one with Mario without the rig. So I would just say Mario underscore bind pose. And this is just going to be a simple Maya file. Okay, so Mario bind pose, no rig attachment, nothing like that. Save. And I would delete the rig, because if you were to export this right now, and I'll show you that, if I were to take Mario and his root joint and whatever, and I go to export him, you can, but there's a lot of stuff that's actually built on this rig that will go with it. These little links, these will go with. So I'm going to show you that. So export selection. I'll make this one the Mario bind pose tut, just so we know it's the one. Standard setup, everything else is the same as before. I'll just hit export. I can ignore my warning. I'll jump back into here, get my skeleton mesh folder, and of course you can organize these by character. I can put Elf Dude all in his own thing and Mario in his own thing, but for now I'm going to drop them in with the others. So Mario bind pose, where's my tutorial? There it is, bind pose tut. There he is. Okay, and if I were to grab him, bring him in, and then open him up, you can see we have a root control. So that root control, even though Unity cannot effectively read the NURB file, because this root control is a NURB, Unity doesn't really know what to do with that. That's just extra garbage. Is anything you don't want attached to your bind pose model, you would grab. So I'm going to get this root control and just remove the rig there. And you can see that got rid of all the extra stuff on that. And then in my Mario group here that has all of the geometry, I would remove anything I don't want included. So in this case, I have hat and hair. Those I would like to import separately like we did before. So I'm just going to remove those from the group. You can select them again with Control, Shift P to take them out of the group. Or you can middle mouse drag to move them in and out of the group if you desire. So now if I close that group, I just have the geometry by itself. And I have the root bone, so I can get both of those. And then export selection again. And I'll do that over the tutorial one. Hooray. And while I'm here, I'll also do my hat. Let me get the hat and the hair. I'll turn those both on. So the hat I'll take with the hat root. I'll export those. So Mario bind pose. I'll do underscore hat. And I can hide both of those. And then I'll get the hair and the hair, and I will export those. So hat and then hair. Hooray! Let me get rid of this one. Yes, Unity doesn't re-import very well. You have to go to the parent folder and re-import from there, which is just kind of annoying. So it's just easier to delete and then re-import. So I'll get Mario bind pose. And there he is. He came in a lot cleaner. There's no extra garbage on him, just Mario. You can see the group of all the components, and then the root with all the bones in it. So that's all happy. And then we can bring in the hair and the hat. Again, I will make a prefab for him. So a prefab for Mario. Again, that's create scene prefab. Weird spot for it to be in, but I'll make that Mario. Bring in my skeletal mesh and any of the components that need to go with him. So where's the hat? There's the hat and the hair. Those came in pretty well. So here's the hair. Hair needs to go to the head joint. So let's go ahead and just open up Mario. I'm going to open up the root. And we got spine 1, 2, and 3, neck, head, and then the head joint at the end. Let me go ahead over here. Yeah, that should be right there. So hair needs to attach to the head joint. And you can see the hair came in like this. Now the reason for that is on the Mario skeleton. If I get that joint and we turn on the local rotation axis, you can see that this joint was not set to world. It should be set to world, but I never did. So it has X going down the bone and Z forward, Y out. So when we attach the hair, it gets flipped based on that orient. So good practice would be to set this bone before attaching it, before binding the skeleton to the skin. You would orient it to world. Because it's already attached, I don't have the luxury of orienting it now. I would have to detach it from the current model, orient it, and then reattach it. And if you have skin weights, then it's a problem. This model, because he's segmented, doesn't have skin weights. Everything's actually weighted to one part of the body, which makes it a lot easier. But just be aware of that, plan that out as you go. Or just deal with rotating it once it's in the scene. But that would be what you do. You'd make sure that that's oriented to world. In this case, just to show you, I can go to rigging, skin, let me go ahead to unbind, and then I'll get that joint. That one, I go to skeleton, orient joint. I will just get that joint and check orient to world. If I hit apply, you can see it's because it's attached to a parent object, its world orient is actually its parents. So I'll just shift P to detach it, hit apply, now it's world, and then I will reattach it. So child, parent, and then P. And then I can get Mario's head and the skeleton. And then I can bind the skin again. So this is actually a selected joint bind. So selected joint, closest in distance is fine, and a max influence of 1. So now that's reattached. This is in the correct orient, and I'll just re-export him. So get those, export selection, bind post hooked. I'll jump back into Unity. I'll get him. I have to nuke it, unfortunately, and then re-import him. So where are you at? Bind post hooked, bring him in. So there's Mario. We will retry that. Neck, head 4. So there we go. So now the hair is in the correct orient. And I can do the same thing with the hat. So I'll take the hat, drop it in, and there's the hat. Now, of course, the hat and the hair cannot both exist at the same time, so I would just turn one on or off, depending on which one I want. And of course, through the miracle of editing, I will go ahead and just attach the other textures. You've seen how to do this already, so I will let you go through it. Yeah, hooray! There they are. Now, of course, one thing you might see once I imported the texture for Mario is that his skin tone is a little bit darker than the nose, just because these have 2 different shader values. One thing you can do if you get this is grab your texture, and then over in the sRGB color textures option, you can uncheck that, and this will give you a more raw color. I'll just hit apply, and now it's a little bit closer to whatever the nose was. That's just a color mismatch because the shader color is not exactly the same. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. It went a little bit longer than I was hoping, but hopefully you've seen a couple different ways of getting a character ready to use. If you like this format, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it helps the channel, and I shall see you guys next time. Hey guys, thank you for checking out the channel. If you like that video you just watched, consider hitting that like button and hit or subscribe. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, check out the Wielders of Ether. It's my upcoming comic book. The Kickstarter will be dropping pretty soon. You can see that is getting ready here. The newsletter for that, if you go to brucebooks.com, you can sign up for the newsletter, and you will be notified when the Kickstarter drops. We're pretty excited, and we hope to see you on launch day.